Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you with us today. So, as we gear up to embark on this massive journey across time to study world history, looking at the very first artifacts from early human history, tracking nomadic tribes, exploring the massive lifestyle shifts during the Neolithic Revolution, or gazing up at the towering ziggurats of the first civilizations, we actually need to hit pause for a second. Before we dive into the history itself, we've got to talk about the toolkit we use to actually uncover it. See, studying history, it's really about acting as a detective. We're investigating the past. We don't have a time machine to just zap back and watch these ancient events unfold firsthand, right? Instead, we have to piece the whole story together using the clues left behind. And let me tell you, that requires a very specific set of skills.
Okay, let's dive into this. How do historians actually know what happened in the past? It's a massive, foundational question. When we're looking at a piece of ancient pottery or trying to decode some early cuneiform writing, we are relying completely on those surviving clues. But how do we know those clues are telling us the truth? How do we know we aren't being totally misled by thousands of years of rumors or hidden agendas? Well, that is exactly what we're going to explore today. We are putting on our detective hats and learning how to rigorously filter fact from fiction so the history we learn is as close to the truth as humanly possible.
So here is our roadmap for today, kind of a training manual for our historical toolkit. First up, the historian's investigative mission. Second, primary and secondary sources. Third, evaluating credibility and accuracy. Fourth, identifying bias in sources. And finally, navigating modern internet research. Let's get to it.
Section 1. The historian's investigative mission.
Historians have a pretty monumental and honestly complex task. They have to piece together historical narratives from fragmented events, totally incomplete records, and literally centuries of fierce historical debates. To understand just how messy this gets, historians often have to study the ways humans actually resolve their differences. Take this definition of compromise: the settling of a dispute when each party agrees to give up some of its demands to reach a resolution. Think about the Neolithic Revolution, right? When early humans first shifted from being nomadic hunter-gatherers to settled farmers, as these first civilizations grew along rivers like the Tigris and Euphrates, communities suddenly had to share limited water for irrigation. They couldn't just pack up and move away if there was a disagreement anymore. They had to compromise. So when a historian studies early agricultural settlements, they have to investigate all those competing demands and figure out the ultimate middle ground that was reached to share those vital resources.
Section 2. Primary and secondary sources. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we actually get the evidence to untangle these complex moments. We rely entirely on sources. And to really grasp this, you've got to apply this investigative skill right out of the gate. Try this. Choose a topic from early human history, maybe the rise of Mesopotamian city-states, and find 3 or 4 historical sources plus 3 to 4 contemporary sources about that same topic. Then examine every single one for its validity, its credibility, its accuracy, and any signs of bias. This right here, this is the heavy lifting of historical research. You don't just read one document and accept it as the absolute gospel truth. You cross-reference, you chart your findings, and you verify everything.
Section 3. Evaluating credibility and accuracy.
Okay, so just because a document or an artifact exists, even if it's this incredibly old, priceless piece of pottery sitting behind glass in a museum, that doesn't mean it's telling the whole truth. People in the past, they made mistakes, they exaggerated, and yeah, they lied. We have to weigh the evidence for accuracy. And accuracy simply means the source presents the facts correctly and is fundamentally based on other accurate sources and strong evidence. So for example, if a primary source claims this massive, catastrophic flood wiped out early settlements, a thorough researcher doesn't just take that single source's word for it. No way. They're going to look at other primary and secondary sources, or even geological records, to see if they actually corroborate that event. This cross-checking process is exactly how history is built on a solid foundation.
But it goes deeper than that. A historian must also examine exactly how and why a source was created in the first place. I want you to always act like a detective here and deeply question the original purpose behind a document or a structure's creation. Think about a towering ziggurat in ancient Mesopotamia or an Egyptian pyramid. Was it built simply to serve as a tomb or a temple? Or was it crafted as massive architectural propaganda, designed by a king or pharaoh to project absolute power and intimidate their rivals? Understanding the why behind a historical source is often just as revealing as understanding the what inside of it.
When you're evaluating credibility, there are some absolutely vital questions to ask.
Imagine applying this checklist to a newly uncovered cuneiform tablet. You'd ask yourself, does the creator have a reputation for truthfulness? What are the author's specific qualifications on this subject? Are their statements actually supported with hard evidence? Is the language objective or is it highly emotional? Can you find this exact same information anywhere else? And finally, does the creator address other viewpoints? Basically, the more you can confidently answer yes to these questions, the more reliable you can consider your source to be.
Section 4. Identifying bias in sources.
So the crucial point is this. Even if the facts within a document are technically accurate, those facts can still be presented with a hidden angle or a specific agenda. We need to look at the meaning of bias and why it's so important to identify it. It's incredibly vital because spotting bias tells you the true perspective of the author. Think about it. An ancient Egyptian account of a border dispute might sound completely different from a neighboring civilization's account of that exact same dispute, even if they both agree a battle took place. Recognizing bias doesn't necessarily mean you have to throw the source in the trash. Rather, it means you, as the historian, must factor that skewed perspective into your final understanding of the broader truth.
Section 5. Navigating modern internet research.
Fast forward to today. We aren't just looking at dusty scrolls in a library anymore. We are constantly bombarded with information online, and we need to know how to filter it. The internet makes finding vast amounts of information incredibly easy, sure, but determining credibility can be exceptionally challenging. Online, you're often going to find articles without clear authors or proper citations. When you stumble upon a web page about early civilizations, it can be entirely unclear if that source was created by a true expert holding a PhD in history, or just, someone with a casual weekend interest who might be accidentally spreading misinformation. Without verifiable authors and citations to back up their content, your historical alarm bells should absolutely be ringing.
And this brilliantly illustrates a great shortcut for our digital detectives, analyzing the URL. If a website's address ends in .gov, it indicates it's part of a government entity and probably contains highly accurate data. If it ends in .edu, it's usually a site for an educational institution. The information here is often accurate, but remember, it may contain opinions in addition to facts. And if it ends in .org, it represents a nonprofit organization. These sites can be very accurate, but they definitely require a closer look.
You really have to pay special attention to those .org addresses. While nonprofits often do fantastic work, the information on these sites must be examined super carefully for opinion-based statements. Organizations will sometimes emphasize information that specifically supports their goals. They might even leave out facts that don't serve their mission. It's like you have to read between the lines online exactly as you would with an ancient historical document. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative question to reflect on as you take these new tools and embark on your actual world history journey. How might your own personal biases affect the historical sources you choose to believe? It's a big one, right? We all have our own perspectives, backgrounds, and worldviews. Sometimes, without even realizing it, we're drawn to sources that simply confirm what we already think, and we reject the sources that challenge us. But a true history detective challenges their own assumptions just as rigorously as they challenge their ancient sources. So keep that mindset sharp as you step out to uncover the fascinating stories of our past. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, always keep investigating.